The roar of the stadium was a physical thing, a tidal wave of sound crashing over Kale's Storm Rider as he soared through the electrifying air of the aerodrome, the gleaming arrow ball clutched against his chest. Below him, the polished obsidian floor of the Valeris arena blurred, the opposing Steelhawks defenders scrambling like ants beneath a descending hawk. Victory, the championship, his lifelong dream, it was inches away, a single perfect shot separating him from glory. Then a shadow flickered at the edge of his vision, a familiar shape moving with terrifying speed, not towards the goal, but towards him. It wasn't an opponent's desperate lunge, it was Jaxor Steel, his teammate, his brother forged in the grueling training pits of the Storm Riders Academy. Jaxor, who should have been clearing his path, instead slammed into him with brutal, calculated force. Not a tackle for the ball, but a collision designed to maim. Kale heard the sickening crack before he felt it, a white-hot explosion in his right knee. The arrow ball tumbled from his grasp as the world tilted violently. The roar of the crowd morphed into a shocked gasp, then a horrified silence as Kale plummeted, not towards triumph, but into a chasm of agony and betrayal. He saw Jaxor's face, impassive for a split second, devoid of remorse, before the hard floor rushed up to meet him, stealing his breath, his dream, and his future in one devastating impact. The darkness that swallowed Kale was filled not with peace, but with the echoing sound of that crack, the chilling image of Jaxor's cold eyes. When he surfaced days later in the sterile white confines of the Helios Medical Center, the pain was a constant, throbbing companion, but it was dwarfed by the icy fury crystallizing in his chest. The diagnosis was a death sentence for his playing career: shattered patella, torn ligaments, nerve damage. "You'll walk again, Kale," the surgeon, Dr. Aris Thorne, said gently, his voice laced with pity that felt like acid. "But competitive arrowball, it's over. I'm so sorry." Over. The word echoed in the hollow space Jaxor's betrayal had carved. Kale learned Jaxor had claimed it was a tragic accident, a misjudged aerial block, his own momentum carrying him into Kale. The league officials, swayed by Jaxor's crocodile tears and sterling reputation, bought it. Jaxor, suddenly the sole star of the Storm Riders, signed a colossal contract with the rival Steelhawks, the very team they'd been seconds from defeating. The narrative spun in the media was of Jaxor's resilience, carrying the torch after his friend's tragic fall. Kale's name became a footnote, a cautionary tale whispered in training camps.
Rehabilitation was hell. Every excruciating stretch, every punishing session with the stoic physiotherapist, Lyra Vex, was fueled by that image with Jaxor's face. Lyra, recognizing the fire beneath the despair, pushed him relentlessly. "The body remembers pain, Storm Rider," she'd say, her voice sharp but not unkind. "But it also remembers strength. Find it." He found it in the furnace of his rage. He wouldn't play again, but he refused to vanish. He devoured game footage, analyzed strategies, studied coaching manuals, his mind sharpening into a weapon as his body slowly, painfully rebuilt itself. 5 years crawled by. Khalil Storm Rider was no longer the soaring prodigy. He was a ghost haunting the periphery of the sport he loved, a respected but distant analyst for the obscure sports channel PulseNet. His commentary was insightful, cutting, but devoid of the passion that once defined him. He watched Jaxor Steel ascend to godlike status with the Steelhawks, a 3-time league MVP. His betrayal was buried under mountains of accolades and carefully crafted public adoration. Kale's revenge was a silent, patient thing, coiled deep inside, waiting. The opportunity came unexpectedly. The struggling Valeris Vipers, the city's perpetually underperforming second team, desperate for a turnaround, offered him the head coach position. It was a poisoned chalice, a team riddled with apathy, poor discipline, and a locker room fractured by ego. The owner, the shrewd but weary Mira Thorne, no relation to the surgeon, saw something in Kyle's analytical mind, a flicker of the old fire. "They need discipline, Stormrider," she said, her gaze direct. "They need someone who understands what it means to fight when everything's broken." Kale accepted, not for redemption, but for proximity. The Vipers' training facility shared space with the gleaming Steelhawks complex. He would be in Jack Soar's orbit, a constant, silent reminder. His coaching style was brutal, uncompromising. He drilled the Vipers relentlessly, focusing on defense, agility, exploiting weaknesses, the very weaknesses he knew existed in Jack Soar's flashy, individualistic style. He found unexpected allies. Ren, the aging, cynical playmaker, whose best years were behind him, but whose mind was razor-sharp. Zara, the lightning-fast rookie winger with raw talent and a chip on her shoulder. And Boren, the hulking, silent defender with surprising aerial grace. Kale molded them, forging them not just into a team, but into a weapon honed for one specific purpose. The Vipers started winning. Ugly, gritty wins at first, built on relentless defense and punishing counterattacks. Kale's icy demeanor and tactical genius became a story. He never mentioned Jack Soar, never acknowledged the Steelhawks' beyond-game preparation, but his players felt it. They felt the intensity, the near-fanatical focus whenever they faced Jack Soar's team. Ren, during a late-night strategy session, finally voiced it. "It's him, isn't it? Steel? This fire, it's about more than wins."
Kale met his gaze, the first time he'd allowed the raw truth to surface. He took everything, not just the game, the trust, the future. He doesn't even remember the cost. The admission hung in the air, binding the team closer. They weren't just playing for the Vipers anymore. They were instruments of their coach's long-delayed justice. The season became a slow, thrilling burn. The Vipers, once league jokes, climbed the standings. Their clashes with the Steelhawks were wars. Kale devised strategies specifically to neutralize Jack Soar, forcing him into errors, frustrating his flamboyance, exposing the subtle decline in his speed that only a former teammate, a victim, could truly perceive. The media buzzed with the Storm Rider redemption angle, but Kale remained a sphinx, giving nothing away. Jack Soar, initially dismissive, grew visibly agitated. Kale's silent, competent presence was a burr under his saddle. The effortless charm he wielded for the cameras began to show cracks when questioned about Kale's success. Kale's meticulous plan involved more than just beating Jack Soar on the court. He began discreetly digging into the past. He tracked down Celine, a former Storm Rider's physio who'd left abruptly after the incident. After weeks of cautious approach, she met him in a quiet corner of the Helios Memorial Gardens. Her face was etched with years of guilt. "He paid me, Kale," she whispered, tears welling. "Jack Soar, a lot. To adjust my report. To downplay the pre-existing weakness in your knee in the official records. He said it was to protect the team's image, to protect you from scrutiny. I was young, scared. I believed him." She handed Kale a faded data crystal. "This is the original scan, the one that showed your knee was strong, perfect." The proof was in his hand, cold, hard evidence of the lie that had destroyed him. Vindication surged, hot and fierce. But revenge, he realized, staring at the crystal, wasn't just about exposing Jack Soar. It was about reclaiming everything. He needed the ultimate stage. Miraculously, the valorous Vipers clawed their way into the playoffs. Even more astonishingly, they battled through to face the mighty Steelhawks in the Galactic Cup Finals. The valorous arena, sold out, pulsed with frenzied energy. It wasn't just a championship game. It was a reckoning 5 years in the making. Jaxor Steele, the Golden Boy, versus Kale's Storm Rider, the scarred strategist. The narrative was irresistible. Kale gathered his Vipers in the Stark locker room before the game. The air crackled with tension. He looked at Ren, Zara, Boren, and the others, not just players now, but comrades. He held up the data crystal, its dim light reflecting in their wide eyes. 5 years ago, he began, his voice rough but steady, cutting through the pregame noise. Jaxor Steele didn't just tackle me, he chose to end my career. He paid people to lie. He built his empire on that lie. A collective gasp rippled through the room. He saw fury ignite in Zara's eyes, grim understanding settle on Ren's face, cold resolve harden Boren's features. This, Kale tapped the crystal, is proof, but proof alone isn't victory. Exposing him to the world after we crush him on this court, after we take what he values most, that is victory. Play this game not just for the cup. Play it for every underdog who's been cheated. Play it for yourselves, and play it, his voice dropped to a low growl, for the truth. The roar that erupted from the Vipers wasn't just pregame hype. It was a battle cry. They charged onto the court not as underdogs, but as avengers. The game was a masterpiece of controlled fury and tactical brilliance. Kale orchestrated from the sidelines, his every move a counter to Jaxor's predictable arrogance. Boren shadowed Jaxor like a relentless specter, using his strength and Kale's intimate knowledge of Jaxor's habits to disrupt his rhythm. Zara was a darting viper, exploiting every gap Jaxor's frustration created. Ren, the old fox, pulled the strings with precision, directing the flow, making the Steelhawks dance to the Viper's desperate, aggressive tune. Jaxor unraveled. The constant pressure, the physicality of Boren, the sting of Zara's goals, and the silent, accusing presence of Kale on the sidelines, it eroded his composure. He forced plays, argued with referees, berated his teammates. His usual dazzling moves became clumsy, desperate. The Steelhawks, used to riding his brilliance, floundered. The score remained agonizingly close throughout. As the final minutes bled away, the Vipers clung into a fragile 1-point lead. The Steelhawks mounted one last desperate attack. Jaxor, ignoring open teammates, charged towards the goal, a manic gleam in his eye, determined to be the hero. Boren met him in midair, a titanic collision that echoed Kale's own fall. Both players tumbled, but Boren, anticipating the reckless charge, managed to deflect the arrow ball. It spiraled loose straight toward Zara. She seized it, a blur of speed, leaving stunned defenders in her wake. The arena held its breath. Jaxor scrambled up, pure panic on his face, giving futile chase. Zara soared, time seeming to slow, and unleashed a shot of pure, focused power. The arrow ball streaked past the flailing Steelhawks' peeper and slammed into the goal net just as the final hooter blared. Valorous Arena exploded. The Vipers had done the impossible. They were Galactic Cup champions. Amidst the delirious celebrations, the confetti shower, the hoisting of the gleaming cup, the tears and laughter of his players, Kale Storm Rider stood relatively still. He watched the defeated Steelhawks trudge off the court, Jaxor Steele at their center, head bowed, the picture of shattered arrogance. The roar of the crowd was sweet, the victory sweeter, but the taste wasn't solely triumph. It was complex, laced with the ashes of his old life and the hard-won ground of his new one. He waited. As the initial chaos subsided, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust towards him. He raised a hand, silencing them momentarily. His gaze locked onto Jaxor, who had paused at the tunnel entrance, looking back, a mixture of disbelief, fury, and dawning fear on his face. Kale didn't approach him. Instead, he turned to the nearest camera, its red light glaring like an accusing eye. "This victory belongs to the valorous Vipers," Cale spoke, his amplified voice cutting through the stadium noise, bringing a hush. "To their heart, their grit, their refusal to be defined by anyone's expectations but their own." He paused, the weight of the next words heavy in the air. "But this moment also belongs to the truth. 5 years ago, on this very court, my career was ended not by an accident, but by a deliberate act of betrayal." A collective gasp swept the stands. He held up the data crystal. "This contains irrefutable evidence that Jaxor Steele paid a physiotherapist to falsify medical reports, hiding the fact that my knee was perfectly healthy before his illegal tackle. He lied to the league, to the fans, and stole not just a championship, but a player's future." The silence was absolute now, stunned. Jaxor's face drained of color. He took a step back, shaking his head, but the denial died unspoken in the face of Cale's unwavering stare and the damning evidence held high. Camera swung wildly between Cale and Jaxor, capturing the moment of utter downfall. "I pursued this victory," Cale continued, his voice dropping slightly but losing none of its power, "not just for the cup, but to prove that integrity, hard work, and the refusal to be broken will always rise. Jaxor Steele built his legacy on sand. Today the tide came in." He looked directly at Jaxor. "The league will receive this evidence. Justice, delayed, will finally be served." He didn't wait for the eruption of questions, the pandemonium that followed his declaration. He turned his back on Jaxor's crumbling world and walked towards his celebrating team. Ren clasped his shoulder, a fierce grin on his face. Zara thrust the gleaming galactic cup towards him. Boren gave a single, solemn nod. The revenge was complete. Jaxor's reputation was annihilated in an instant, his career likely over, facing suspension or worse. The stolen glory was reclaimed, publicly, decisively. But as Cale hoisted the cup amidst his roaring players, the fiery core of vengeance that had sustained him for 5 years felt spent. In its place was a profound exhaustion, yes, but also something unexpected. A quiet sense of peace and the dawning realization that he had built something new, something strong and true from the ruins Jaxor had left. The roar of the crowd wasn't just for the victory anymore. It was a wave of vindication washing over him, carrying away the last bitter dregs of the past. He looked up at the swirling lights of the aerodrome, no longer a cage of painful memory, but a symbol of a future he had forged himself, one hard-fought, honest point at a time. The path ahead, finally, was his own.